Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 74 of the CRM MVP podcast. I miss you guys. I feel like I haven't been on the microphone for, like 2 months or something like that. I really wanted to get in here and kind of have a conversation with you because I've been working with a few customers over the last few months, and interestingly enough, I've been working on projects for a lot of organizations that had Dynamics 365 or Dynamics CRM. They've had it since 2010, 2011, 2012. They come from a variety of backgrounds. In other words, some of them implemented with a partner, some of them self-implemented. They did it themselves, but one of the things that is they all have in common is the fact that they look at their implementation and they realize that, look, this is just not working out. It is time to rethink this thing. It is time to perhaps infuse our solution with a lot of innovation, because since we implemented last, Dynamics 365 has changed. And I think that, when you look at the implementation of Dynamics 365, and in the past, I think if I look at my history implementing Dynamics, I would say an overwhelming majority of projects that I've done, I've done over 200 implementations by now. I think 80 to 90% of those implementations are for customers that were using a different CRM system, or in other words, Dynamics was going to be brand new for the organization. So whether they were using Salesforce or Sugar CRM or Goldmine or a proprietary system, whatever it was, Siebel, etc., Dynamics was going to be brand new for them. So that is the overwhelming amount. But in some cases, you find these organizations that were using Dynamics 365 or Dynamics CRM for a while, but no longer use it for whatever reason. So when you look at the statistics about implementing Dynamics 365 or Dynamics CRM, I guess it all depends on what you read, but I think is an overwhelmingly accepted fact that most CRM projects fail because of user adoption, right? You can see there are, statistics out there that talk about 70% of CRM projects fail because of user adoption. But I don't think it's that big. I think the user adoption can be broken down into several categories, right? If you paint user adoption with a broad, brush, I guess, you can fill in a lot of different categories within user adoption. For example, you can say that, one of the most popular ones that I hear out there is that, using Dynamics is too time consuming, right? I'm spending so much time in the system, whereas I need to be selling, or I need to be supporting our customers, or I need to be fulfilling work orders and doing work on site. Whatever it is, the fact that it's time consuming comes up a lot. The fact that it's difficult to learn, like I just don't get it. It's too complicated. There's too much on the screen, or there's too much white space. Like you hear them both. It's kind of interesting to hear the feedback from both sides. Sometimes within the same team and within the same company, they have this reversed kind of opinion in Dynamics, and they all use it as an excuse to not jump on the solution. Sometimes poor performance can be an excuse, or whether the system is not flexible enough or not dynamic enough, not pun intended, on the to support their workflow and to support the way they work. The fact that maybe it doesn't integrate well with some of the other systems. Like I still have to go to these other systems and pull the information or whatever it is. So there's a bunch of excuses when it comes to user adoption and people building it in. But honestly, it doesn't really matter, if your project failed, because a lot of them don't fail tremendously. They don't fail completely. A lot of them are able to move forward with relative success. Now, do you get 100% user adoption on every implementation? Of course not. Not every implementation will be 100% perfect. There's always situations where, like, the best salesperson of the company is, I've been doing this for 50 years and I'm not going to change for anybody, right? That always happens. You always get those characters in multiple organizations. And the managers, even though they support Dynamics 365, they're not going to come and fire their best salesperson just because he or she refuses to use Dynamics 365 or to learn Dynamics 365, even though it could be highly beneficial for them, even though they're the best performing salesperson, customer service representative, whatever, fill in the blank here. It doesn't matter. What you find is that Organizations have relative success when it comes to implementing Dynamics 365. Now, here's the interesting part. I've done a ton of successful implementations, and the customers that I'm working with right now, because they have been using Dynamics for so long, obviously their implementations were successful. They have been using it for 10 years, in some cases 9 years, 8 years, whatever it is. For the most part, those implementations were successful, but yet those implementations are now pretty much dead. Whatever solutions they implemented years ago that enjoyed the high user adoption rate, and they didn't fall through the cracks and failed as a CRM implementation, even though all of that worked out. Nowadays, the solution is inoperable in some cases. In other cases, you will notice that the users have been using it as effectively as a Rolodex. They're just adding information and getting nothing out of Dynamics at all. It's interesting. You work with customers and they are like, oh yeah, we've been putting in appointments and phone calls and tasks for 8 years, and that's it. Like, that's all you do? Yeah, that's all we do. And there they are. Like, they're using Dynamics and they're getting no value in return. That is always amazing to see. When that happens, because I always expect that if I don't get value, why am I going to use this solution, right? So when I see these customers that have been using Dynamics, that went live, that had success with their implementation, and now their solution is essentially dead, is bankrupt, it's done. They're looking for something new. One of the things that I start thinking about is how much complacency can kill a solution or an implementation. And this is not just applicable to Dynamics 365. This is applicable to any solution, I guess. You can talk about a new portal that you created outside of Dynamics. So you can talk about business intelligence solutions. You can talk about SharePoint. You can talk about anything, right? I think complacency kills. Or if you're a fan of Jocko Willink, he has a saying that says discipline equals freedom, right? If you have the discipline to follow strict set of rules about whatever you do, your life, your system, in this case, Dynamics 365, you can enjoy the freedom of having a system that is healthy and that it evolves over time rather than getting to a point where it needs to be taken, behind the barn and shot. So for today's episode, I started thinking about the customers that I've been working with over the past year or so, year and a half. A lot of great customers, of course. The big plus that they have is that they have been using Dynamics for a long time, but they got to a point, in some cases, not all cases, in some cases, we do have some great customers that just wanted to make the transition from on-premise to online, and they were very successful with their on-premise environment, and we're helping them make the transition to the cloud. But in some cases, some customers got to a point where no one in the company was using the solution anymore after 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, whatever it was. So I sat down and I wrote my top 10 reasons how or why complacency can kill a solution like Dynamics 365. So again, this is my list for it. And if you're listening to this, if you have Dynamics 365 in your organization and you maybe implemented it a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you might listen to this and be like, that just doesn't apply to me. Everyone in my company uses it. Everybody's happy. But that is the problem. The problem is that when you become complacent, your solution can suffer. It can get to a point where you cannot recover from it, where at that point you're just trying your best to keep kind of the doors open, to keep people using the functionality, right? And that's not the way it's supposed to be. The idea is that if you have the right discipline, you can enjoy the freedom of knowing that your solution will be used and leveraged forever, essentially, or hopefully, right? Unless something happens that forces you not to do so. Like I have a great customer, which at this point, I guess is former customer, whose company, very, very happy with Dynamics 365, great customers to work with. Their company was acquired by a massive corporation that uses Salesforce. So they were forced to end their Dynamics 365 solution. They were absorbed into the Salesforce solution that the company used, and Dynamics went away. You can't prevent those, and I don't think this list applies to customers like that, but it does apply to customers that feel like Dynamics 365 has been adopted, everybody's using it, even if it's being used for, just to track activities, but everybody's using it, right? Quote unquote. And I don't have to worry anymore about Dynamics 365. Well, that is what can kill your solution. So let's talk about this list. Again, I'm glad to be back here talking to you guys, and I can't wait to hear your feedback on this. If you are an implementer, I know that a lot of you listening to this are solution architects yourself or implement Dynamics for a living, functional consultants, CRM administrators, etc. It's really hard to have the optics to implementations like that, because as implementers, we typically come in, we implement a solution that makes sense for the organization, and then we leave, right? We leave them live, happy, everyone using Dynamics, everybody excited about the new solution. So you rarely get to go back and work with those customers, even if the customers stay as customers of your organization for years. You typically you take them live, and then you move on to the next project. The support team or somebody else within your organization will pick up those customers and continue to work with them. So you're never there to see what happens 5 years down the road. I guess it all depends on the company too, obviously, because, our company's small and I get to continue to work with customers ongoing after the implementation and forever, essentially. So I really enjoy that. I enjoy going back and seeing what they've done. But if you have worked with organizations in the past that essentially are coming from a dead or dying or in, a solution that is in deep trouble, you will understand that these reasons could have prevented some of that from happening. So number one reason, to cause your solution to die essentially is to stop learning new things. I know that when we implement Dynamics 365 for the first time and everything goes live, the last thing you want to do is to see what else is out there, what else is new, what else is Microsoft doing or coming up with. I get it. It's the same thing. If you just buy a house, you're no longer, after you bought the house, going out there in the market to see what other houses are for sale. You just bought a house. So why do I need to learn new things if we just went live with a functionality that is perfect for my organization? All right. So what happens with people that stop learning new things is that new things are not always functionality that is coming out. New things are not always new features and things that Microsoft is releasing. New things are things like changes to licensing. New things are things like, deprecation of existing functionality. New things are things like, that version of Outlook or whatever app that you use will stop working on X day, right? Those are also new things, new announcements, things that are changing with Dynamics 365. So, that is one thing that is super important to do. I've seen, several implementations that when I talk to the administrators or whoever was responsible for that, once, thriving solution, they say, look, we spent 3 years that we didn't make a single change into Dynamics 365. And next thing we knew, we were depending on the service catalog, for example, the service calendar to schedule things. And now it's being deprecated. And now our solution is pretty much dead. We have to migrate and do something else. So number one, stop learning new things is a very quick way, in some cases slower, depending on how much functionality you implemented, to wreck your solution completely. We have a few customers right now working with us to convert all of the code that they have created, for years and years and years into the classic interface that now it doesn't work whatsoever on the unified interface. Now, those customers were on top of it. They understood the changes were coming, and they're working, with us and our technical team to convert all of that code, whether they're doing it themselves or they're doing it with us or, we're doing it together, whatever it is. They understand the changes are coming. That's a new thing that is happening, and they are working diligently to make sure that everything is transferred into the unified interface before they pull the plug on, October of 2020. But if you are one of those customers that ignores the emails from Microsoft, especially the customers that like to have an administrator account that they only log in when they need to change it, well, you can go through a year or 2 years of changing nothing. And I know some of you are thinking like, that's impossible because we get upgraded every 6 months. And I'm talking about CRM Online customers. We get upgraded every 6 months. How can you not go and do anything? Well, if your implementation is pretty simple, if your implementation is pretty straightforward, or maybe it wasn't its day, meaning no functionality was compromised with new features and changes introduced in one of the releases, then your stuff works without testing. You just keep living your life and your solution works. One of those things is, for example, our solution. Even though I'm super diligent about knowing what's coming and testing this stuff, and obviously being as part of the insiders program and testing my functionality before it comes out, I haven't had the need to change anything other than migrating into the UI, the Unified Interface, the UCI. Other than that, everything pretty much works. Whenever, we need a new version of Click Dimensions with your child, they have a new version, or they tell us, hey, we tested it with a new version. Your version is good to go. Whatever it is, I haven't had the need to replace a bunch of stuff, but that's because our implementation is not a complex, implementation with a bunch of customization. So the less customizations you have, the easier it is to kind of be oblivious about changes happening every 6 months with Dynamics 365. So again, that is number one. Stop learning new things is, one way to kill your solution. Number two on the list of ways to kill your Dynamics 365 implementation is data quality, right? Completely becoming complacent when it comes to data quality. Look, people cannot trust data, right, that is in a system where there's a bunch of duplicates, there's a bunch of stale data, where a bunch of data is still owned by people who don't even work for the company anymore, where the data that is integrated takes days for the integration to work. I've seen that before, where integrations run over the weekend because there's a lot of data. So people are looking at a record on Wednesday and being like, I wonder if that's still useful, or if something changed on Monday or Tuesday, then now I cannot trust this, let's say, AR status, account receivable status. I don't know if they owe us anything anymore. So they could have bought something yesterday and it's not reported, right? So, having issues with data quality, being complacent about data quality can absolutely wreck an implementation. For most organizations, when they go live, if you work with a partner, or if you were diligent about implementing Dynamics, one of the things that you do is ensure that the data that you go live with has a great quality data, right? Because the idea of having a system like Dynamics 365 is that it helps you make business decisions. You can make decisions based on the data that you have, right? That's the idea behind business intelligence. Rather than making these decisions based on your 30 magical years of experience and whatever you have as a hunch at that moment, you are now able to use data to support your decision. And that's why it's called decision support in some cases. But in order to make quality decisions, you have to have quality data. So a lot of people spend time and a lot of money to make sure that the data is deduplicated, that is active, when it comes to ownership, that is, quality data essentially. So a lot of companies go live with data quality under control, no problem. But then they become complacent, right? Then they do things like, for example, creating an integration, but not securing the fields that are integrated, let's say from your ERP system, not securing those, allowing people to override them. And overriding them can create duplicates and, problems essentially that will happen on your implementation. And I think we can do a whole episode about data quality. I don't know how animated and exciting we can make an episode about data quality, but that's certainly something that we should probably talk about in the future, how to keep your data quality, what tools, what ideas we can use for that. But again, I've noticed that some implementations that have gone live and everybody loves them and, oh my God, that was so awesome. Now we can't use it because we don't trust our data, or it's too complicated. You go in and there is 4 versions of the same company. It's Coca-Cola, and then the other one is Coca, with a dash, and then Cola, and then the other one is Coca-Cola all together without a space. And that is a huge problem. So data quality and data accuracy is one of those things that you have to keep under control, or it will kill your solution. You'll be cool for maybe a year or whatever and struggle a little bit and find a couple duplicates here and there. Don't worry, let me merge those. But if you become complacent, I'm telling you, it's not going to last long. Your users will lose faith, and then you can blame it on user adoption. But we both know that it was data quality. All right, number 3 on the list is when people go live or start using solutions that kind of half work, right? They don't work 100%. They half work. There are several ways in which you can, think about solutions that half work. Some of them could be, for example, we went live and we were just talking about data and integrations, right? Like, for this to work, it should really be integrated to our licensing server, but we'll do it later. Let's just go live with what we have. I never like to hear that. I never like, let's go live with what we have. I think that if you create a plan and you decide to go live, and you manage it correctly, you should deliver on the functionality that you put on the plan. And I do realize that if you have a large implementation that is going to last a couple years, 2 or 3 years, there are implementations that I've done the last multiple years, there is a chance that when you created your plan and when you thought about what you were going to implement, Microsoft got rid of that functionality. I get that. Things can go away. Companies can go bankrupt. I've done implementations where I'm like, oh man, insert name here of this ISV solution is going to be so great. And then when we get to that point, perhaps not in phase 1, but I leave it for phase 2 or phase 3. And when we get to that point, oh, wow, the company got acquired and now they're doing, add-ins for Salesforce. Oh, okay. Well, back to the drawing board, right? The thing that I was excited about, that I was looking forward to implementing now doesn't exist. That happens a lot. Or solutions that have been free from partners in the past, and now the partner was acquired by a bigger one, and they said, we're not going to give anything away for free. So all the solutions are gone. Like, wow, I was really hoping that I can use that custom solution, going forward, and now it's gone. So I realize that things can happen like that, but I've seen so many times that people are willing to go live with a solution that only half works. Like, okay, it works great for these for 90% of of our users, but not the other 10%. Look, let's just make 90% of the users happy. Now, I don't believe that you have to be 100% perfect before you go live. I think that you need to make progress before perfection. I think that is a good policy to have. But at the same time, if you neglect a bunch of users just to go live, or just to like, we were supposed to have marketing, but there's no time. Let's just do marketing later or something like that. And I have another one, the next one on the list, touches this. They're kind of related. But what I'm saying is I've seen that before, or I've seen it where the mobility piece is not completed, but don't worry, we'll just do the mobile later. Let's just use the desktops for now. Or, I know that Outlook and being able to convert an email to a case, it was an intricate part, an integral part of our solution. We need to allow the users to be able to convert emails into cases, but you know what? Let's just do that later. Like I've seen that so many times, and it always makes me cringe because I know they won't do it later. Let's just keep it real. In a lot of those cases, and this happens also with the stuff that we discussed in the episode about beautifying Dynamics 365. If you haven't listened to that, I don't remember what number it is. I think it's like number 36 or something like that. But go back and check it out. It's it's great content about how can you beautify Dynamics to make it work better and look better for your users. That one is one of the most half-worked solutions ever, where people skip like either the whole list or like the vast majority of the list, and then say, you know what, I'll deal with relationships later. And then the relationship behavior wrecks their data, and now they have data quality issues. Nobody wants to use it, and then they blame it on user adoption. Oh, our CRM project failed because of user adoption. And that's another thing. I've seen companies that go live for like a year and a half, and then it's like, oh yeah, it failed. It's like, what? You've been using it for a year and a half. It's like, yeah, I know, but right now nobody's using it, so it fails. Or if the whole implementation failed. Well, I don't know about that. Number 4 on the list that I mentioned, this is connected, is forgotten phases, right? When you talk about it in phase 1, and then we, in some cases it's because of time management or whatever. Like, I'm sure if you're listening to this and you're an implementer, you've run into situations where the customer says, no matter what, we need to go live by July 1st or October 1st or March or whatever it is, right? The date, they'll put a date in. And I've done it in a variety of ways. One is the customer was a Salesforce customer and their contract was expiring on, I don't know, December 31st, so they had to go live by January. The other one was a customer who had a big conference and all of their users were going to be in town and they wanted to get the training done, so the whole system needed to be completed by whatever date. So there's always times when you work against the clock, let's just say, and because of that, things are moved into future phases, right? I'm going to do it in phase 2. I'm going to do it in phase 3. Like, no, don't worry about that. I'll do it. I'll give you an example from a project I'm doing right now. I'm doing an implementation for field service, right? One of the things that we talked about is having the integration with with a system. I'm not going to say the name right now, but with a system that provides real-time expectations when it comes to how, when are you going to be here? When are you going to be when is the technician going to be on site? Kind of like Uber, right? When you call an Uber car and it tells you it's 6 minutes away or 12 or whatever it is. So we talked about that, and that was one of the features that they really got excited about, and they want to take the company kind of to the next level because none of their competitors are technically inclined, right? They're in a business that is not super technical, let's just say, or super advanced. So they want to be the ones pushing for innovation, and it got pushed to the next phase, which is fine. But my fear is that you start using the current phase functionality and you get super busy. You start doing these work orders and dispatching people and everything kind of rolls and it goes into a rhythm. And oh my God, this thing is so awesome. It works perfectly. And then the little piece that you talk about, that integration that shows you the turn-by-turn capabilities and how much time you have to get there, or perhaps you were implementing resource schedule optimization, but you decided to wait until phase 2. Forgotten phases is one of those things in which people get complacent and they can kill your solution. I've seen it with marketing automation too, for example, where people say, okay, let's go live with sales. I know that marketing automation is important. It's going to help our sales grow. And we have big expectations when it comes to growing our sales with this implementation of Dynamics. We've heard that customers that heavily customize or automate their process, grow on average 8% in margins, profit margins, right? So that's real money for us. It's an investment for us. But as part of your solution, you're thinking about marketing automation. And if you leave it for phase 2, and then you decide to, for phase 2, I think it's more important we do customer service. Let's do customer service now, and we'll do marketing automation for phase 3. Then customer service comes and goes. Oh, you know what? Field service. Let's focus on that. We'll do marketing automation later. And what happens is the stuff gets lost in the shuffle. You forget those phases. You forget the functionality. So I've seen implementations fail because whoever was in charge of that, whoever was keeping that in mind and was going to implement it, never did it and left the company or whatever it was. So forgotten phases is number 4 on the list. All right, number 5, and we're going to start rolling through these a little bit quicker. Number 5 is continuous education, right? Not learning new things. People getting complacent, and this is different than the learning new things when it comes to announcements and functionality and stuff like that. I'm talking about getting better at what you do, right? Perhaps you stay on top of the fact that Microsoft is coming up with new functionality, like, they just announced Power Platform portals, or Power Apps portals, rather. They just announced, whatever. Yeah, it's cool to stay on top. It's cool that you know that UCI is coming and you need to convert your code to it, but also learning new things that can help your company evolve, right? And again, this is connected to number 6, which is stop evolving with your company. Stop evolving Dynamics 365 with your company. So continuous education can help your company evolve. Help Dynamics 365, your solution, evolve with your company. Look, the bottom line is when you implement Dynamics 365, the idea is, if you didn't use it, if you didn't do it as, an IT project, if you did it as a business project, the idea is that the business is going to improve. It's going to change. It's going to heavily rely on a system to create bigger and better results, right? Not to use it as a Rolodex, like some customers that I mentioned earlier today. So if you implement a system that heavily automates you, that helps you get better at acquiring customers, like as a company, you'll improve. If you're bringing more customers in and you're now able to deliver whatever those customers bought with the same people you have, well, you're growing, you're making more money, the company's changing, you're starting to think about, well, maybe we should introduce some new products that we weren't doing before, right? We're learning from our customers, and we need to, be innovative and come up with new product offerings for the customers, right? If your company's changing, why wouldn't your Dynamics 365 change with it, right? That is one of the areas, and I think this is probably one of the most common ones, the fact that people stop making their solution evolve with the company. If the company changes, if the company starts selling something else, if for some reason, for example, you implemented Dynamics at a time where your company was just trying to grow, and now your company has a huge focus on mergers and acquisition by acquiring some of the competitors and growing that way, you should be able to support those new processes with Dynamics, either by bringing the mergers and acquisitions team into Dynamics, or create a separate instance for them, or whatever it is. Making Dynamics evolve to support those new missions of the company, or by providing data maybe from Dynamics that the team can use. But you should always think of, how can Dynamics do more for our company, right? You're already paying whatever license price you agree to. Why not get the most out of it? Right? And that's the idea of continuous education. That is the idea of keep learning things, keep learning how to leverage functionality that allows you to, extract the most value out of Dynamics for your organization for the price that you're paying. If you're already getting a 200% return of investment, why not make it 2,000%, right? And there's no way you can do that if you keep the same thing going. You have to evolve the solution to help the company grow, or to match the way the company works. Your company just acquires some other company, and that company is dealing with another, business. Let's say you were in, trash collecting, and now you just bought a company that does recycling. How can I evolve Dynamics to support that business and that team, right? Continuously think about ways to evolve Dynamics 365 to support the evolution of your company. So once again, people get super complacent about this. They go live with whatever solution they have, and they'll say that they're evolving the solution because, hey, look, Suzanne asked me for an extra field down in sales, and I added the field. See? I'm evolving. No, just adding a field or an option, to an option set or whatever, that means nothing. That means you're doing your job as an administrator, supporting your current users. But what about all these other users? What about all these other new business models and new teams and new growth and new, changes within the organization? What about those? That is what evolving means. So make sure your Dynamics continues to improve and continues to evolve with your organization. Number 7, ways in which complacency kills. And this is kind of related to one that we talked about earlier, but just adding a bunch of unsupported code because it works, right? A lot of people have this opinion or approach to unsupported code as, these are kind of the today's version of unsigned drivers. I don't know how many of you listening to this used to install drivers, right, before everything is plug and play these days. But if you remember before, like you got a joystick or a webcam or whatever, it always came with drivers. It was either a floppy disk or it was a CD or whatever. Sometimes it was like a super tiny CD. I don't know if you ever got one of those. Typically, like webcams and stuff will come with like the tiniest CD. But you always had to install drivers. And in some cases, because you're cheap and you just want to buy the cheapest thing that would, satisfy whatever you're looking for, you will get a message, right? You were installing your thing in Windows 98 or whatever it was you were using. Windows 98, by the way, till this day is my favorite operating system. So I'm just going to put that out there. Windows 98 second edition is my favorite till this day. But anyway, you were installing your drivers, and out of the blue, you get this message that says this driver contains an unsigned driver. Like using an unsigned driver will cause your system to crash or something like that. And you say, yeah, whatever, potato. You just click yes, go for it, and it worked. It always worked, no problem. Well, unsupported code in a lot of ways is today's version, or at least Dynamics version, of unsigned drivers. You get to get a code that you found online. Maybe you follow one of the amazing MVPs that we have that are developers and like to post solutions out there. Maybe you get a piece of code and you implemented it on your organization, and it works. It just works. But the reason for the unsupported tag is not just to say that, hey, look, whoever wrote this code didn't pay Microsoft to have it supported or whatever. It's because Microsoft is not considering any of that functionality that your unsupported code provides for future enhancements of Dynamics. So if you're an online customer and you know that Dynamics gets a new release every 6 months, well, your code can break every 6 months. And I've worked with customers that have done extensive work, like after go live, like I or any other partner would implement them, and then I see you later, and then 2 years later, it's like their system is unrecognizable because they found some articles out there from 2006 on how JavaScript can be used to add a rainbow of colors to their form or whatever, or to prioritize stuff or do tags or whatever. And now their stuff doesn't work on the new unified interface or whatever it is. So now you are faced with having to convert 8 years worth of unsupported code into the unified interface. Now, I don't want to sound like Microsoft is always right about unsupported code. There are cases in which Microsoft has pulled supported code, right? Where they'll say like, hey, I know you wrote this with supported code that we blessed, with holy water or whatever a few years ago. And now we're saying that it's no longer going to work, but at least they'll give you kind of the equivalent. As far as I've seen, they give you the equivalent of, instead of using this, you can use that, right? And I wish there was a tool that you kind of ran and it read all your supported code that is old school and then converts it into new school or whatever that is. I wish that existed. Maybe an extra toolbox that tool that would do that, or plugin, whatever they call it these days. Jonas and company and Tanguy and Daryl. So creating one of those tools will be awesome. But even if you don't have a tool, at least you have guidance from Microsoft. They said, look, you wrote it with supported code. It is true. Stop yelling. Stop yelling. I get it. It's stop yelling. I get it. You wrote it with supported code and we're taking it away. It's no longer going to work. But at least we're trying to give you the equivalent and whatnot. A lot of these code are written by people, the unsupported code that you find online are written by people that are no longer around. They put it on their articles. They say, look, I'm giving you this code, but don't use it in production. Use it at your own risk. You're stupid if you use it. And people still add it to their implementations and they rely on it for like business critical solutions. And I'm telling you, like, some people have it for years. Nothing happens. It works perfectly. Everything is awesome until it's no longer awesome. And now you find yourself having to either A, write the equivalent of it on the new interface or whatever it is, or B, having to get rid of it. Something that your users have been using for 8 years. Now you have to tell them, hey, look, I cannot find the equivalent for this thing, so I'm going to have to remove it. Sorry that you like the colors and that you have made your entire career here with the company, based on colors. You don't even read the names anymore. You just look at the colors and double click. Yeah, that's no longer going to be there. So sorry about that. That's a problem, right? That can really kill your solution, or, well, at least kill your user adoption. And then you will say that the project failed because of user adoption, like it always happens. 70% of them, right? So like I mentioned, number 7 is adding unsupported code to your organization. And by the way, unsupported code, I think this one covers also unsupported techniques and things. I've seen people that their main argument not to go online is that they have some crazy access to the SQL database, direct SQL access to Dynamics, where they have an integration with an ERP system and it just works. We just write directly to the database and it works. It works great. It's been working since 2015. No problem. Everything works great until it doesn't. That's the thing. Complacency kills. That is the title of this episode. So once again, stay away from unsupported code. There's a ton of solutions out there that are custom. They use supported code. So, focus on that as well. And I know some of you will disagree. Some of you will say that unsupported code is needed sometimes. I don't think so. I think you can get around it, come up with a solution. Or if there's an unsupported, if the only way to solve it is unsupported, then think about what you're trying to do. It is kind of odd. If the only way you can resolve this requirement is that you directly write into the SQL database for Dynamics, then that might be something you want to rethink. So that's important. All right, number 8 on the list. We're down to the last 3 on the list is not checking future deprecations. And again, this is kind of connected to learning new things. Number 1 as well. Microsoft does a really good job announcing deprecations, especially when they're major, right? Especially when they're big. In some cases, like let's say the unified interface, they started announcing that people should transition since I believe 2017, but for sure 2018, right? They started telling people, hey, look, the current UI is going to go away. And by the way, by the time they announced that thing, I think the new UI, even though it's not the way it is today, it's a lot more complete today for sure, but the new UI has been out for years. I think I remember talking about it in like 2015 or something, where the new mobile-based the new mobile-based client was out, and it was super fast, and I love doing demos in it. And I talked about that a lot. So they've been working on that UI for a long time. So when they announced that, it wasn't like, hey, we released this UI yesterday, we really believe you should switch to it. No, it had been out for years at that point. So they announced it. They're giving people time. At some point, I believe it was in October of 2019, if not in April of 2019, they announced that, in October of 2020, so a year and a half later or 2 years later, they were going to, deprecate it, and they continue to kind of announce that. So not checking on future deprecations is a mistake. For the most part, Microsoft does a really good job announcing it, but if you're not paying attention, if you're complacent about this, next thing you find out, and I don't think you're going to find out by showing up, at your office and having everything broken. Although I have some funny stories even from other MVPs and customers that showed up and had their forms upgraded, back when the new turbo forms were introduced in CRM 2011. They just showed up, and I think it was when 2013 came out. I think they showed up, and because the way the announcements worked back in the day were that if you were a system admin, you would get the announcements and nobody else would get them. So a lot of customers would have a system admin account they would only use to log in, when they needed to change it. And once again, they became complacent. They hadn't logged in a while. Next thing they know, show up on Monday, they have CRM 2013, and the whole UI is different, right? If you remember, CRM 2011 was the left navigation pane. CRM 2013 introduced that collapsible top navigation pane thing. Nothing was where it was supposed to be. Everything is different. And then obviously, if you had unsupported codes, some of it wouldn't work at all. It was mayhem, right? Mayhem with no ability to roll back. I don't know any of you who were around at that time, but if you remember, the customers that were forced to CRM 2013 had no way to go back to CRM 2011. Didn't matter what happened. Sorry, we upgraded your entire, scale group. Like everyone who was on that server, not just you, every other customer that was in that scale group was upgraded. There's no way to bring you back. So it's I think Microsoft learned from that, so they've been amazing at communicating. But again, people become complacent. Why not? Like some of you listening to this are the CRM admin / salesperson / director of first impression your company. So you just don't have time to stay on top of it, but your implementation would fail. By the way, if you don't have time to keep up with new things and all of that, that's what partners are for. That's our job, is to stay on top of things, to make sure we don't introduce stuff that is going to break in a few months or recommend things that we know are going to stop working, right? So find a good partner, right? Read reviews, whatever it is, and find a good partner that you can trust and have a relationship, right? With them. They'll keep you out of trouble. So even if it's not that you want to be complacent, you just have other priorities in life, then your partner should be able to help you out. So wherever you are, just find a partner that you trust, and they'll hook you up. All right, number 9 is customizing the production environment directly, right? So introducing new functionality into production directly is a big no. We need to follow an application lifecycle management. And I'm not going to fall into the whole argument about whether you should use manage, unmanage, all that stuff. We've talked about that stuff for hours and hours in this show, and we're not going to stop talking about it. I'm sure it will come up later in the future. I know there have been conversations or pleas, I would say, from people asking Microsoft to add some kind of checkbox or whatever to the settings to prevent people from customizing production and only being able to do it by importing solutions. I don't think I think that that's a good move. I don't think that I would completely stop people from being able to customize, production, because there are some things you can transfer. Like you can transfer, a business unit. You can transfer, some records like. In some cases, for example, people want to use themes, right? So they don't want to create them from scratch, and transferring themes is a data transfer rather than a functionality transfer. So I get it. Like, let me just go into the theme and change this logo directly. But there are people that are full on adding fields and changing forms and doing all kinds of stuff in production directly. And, you're going to pay for that. You're going to pay for that at some point. So that is one way. Number 9 on the list of, in which companies fall complacent, right? And it can kill their environment. I had, I don't know if they were a customer or if they were a prospect, and we started working with them after it happened. But, we had a customer at some point that I think before they started working with us, they had, a bunch of functionality in their sandbox environment, in a dev environment, and then their administrator had been customizing production directly over and over and just adding changes to the point that he didn't even remember what was added to be able to put together a solution and transfer it to the sandbox. So imagine that. Like, just picture that. Picture talking to somebody, trying to put together a solution in production to move it to the sandbox just so the functionality was, in sync, right? And to have this guy saying like, look, I've been customizing production for like 18 months, nonstop. I haven't even touched dev. I haven't even logged in. I don't even know if it works anymore. I've been just doing production because it's the easiest thing, right? A customer, one of my users asked for a field, boom, just add it. One of my users asked for a plugin, I develop it, put it in production, make sure it works, boom, done. So I don't even remember everything that I've done, let alone that. So I just went ahead and did a full copy from production into dev, which would be great, but dev had a bunch of stuff that was unmanaged in dev, and now we had it managed in production, and it was overwritten. Or there were, for example, I think this customer had some documents from the document generator from XRM Toolbox, or MSCRM add-ons rather, and all their templates that were stored on the sandbox environment were overwritten when the full copy was done from production into the sandbox. So situations like that happen all the time. This is another one of those reasons why you don't want to mess with production. You don't want to import a solution to see if it works, do some testing, and then remove it. You might lock it up, just mess everything up. You definitely don't want to mess with production directly. So follow an application lifecycle management and go through a development environment, a testing environment, and ultimately, depending on how many environments you want to use, make that functionality available in production. And last on the list, we're getting to the end here. Thank you so much for staying tuned into our list right here. Number 10 is adding customizations that don't match your customer lifecycle. I've talked about this in the past. My philosophy, my rule as a system integrator, as a solution architect, is that I never put functionality in place that will not help us within our customer lifecycle. And the customer lifecycle is the stages a customer goes through as they engage with us as a company, right? So, those stages are customer acquisition, customer delivery or product delivery of whatever they bought from us, and then support or extending the relationship or, maintaining that customer, right? Customer retention also is called. So if functionality that is being requested will not help us get better at acquiring the customer, it will not help us get better at delivering what the customer bought from us. Like if they bought a project, an implementation, like me as a partner, if it doesn't help me get better at implementing projects for the customer, then I don't do it, right? Or if it doesn't help us retain the customer or, provide better service to them so they are delighted to work with us. If it doesn't help us in any of those stages, I simply don't do it. So what happens is a lot of companies go live, data quality is sharp, everything looks awesome, and then the requests are coming in and they don't have the discipline to say no. Right, requests will come in and say, hey, can you drop a map in the middle of the screen? Like, I really would like to see that. Yeah, why not? I can do that. I learned how to do that on a YouTube video. Let me just go ahead and do that. Hey, by the way, can you color code all this stuff? Well, it's kind of unsupported code, but yeah, I think it works. I'll try it in dev, and it looks good. Let's just go ahead and push it. When you start doing functionality for no reason, meaning no reason that benefits the company or any of the stages within the life cycle, then you start killing your solution. You get to a point where your solution is so complicated that you literally have to start from scratch. And I have several customers, I've worked with several customers over the last 2 years or so that have an existing implementation. The users are using it, but it's so complicated and cumbersome, and the users complain so much that it makes more sense to start from zero, to treat their current implementation as a data source rather than to start from it and trying to fix it. It's a complete spider web of entangled functionality, unsupported code, managed solutions that we don't know where the unmanaged solution is, ISV solutions that the ISV doesn't even exist anymore. So it's a lot better to start from scratch in a lot of cases, and that is essentially killing your solution, right? To the point that you'd rather, get rid of it and start again. So once again, rule number 10 is adding customizations that do not match any of your customer lifecycle stages. So I hope you enjoy this list. Again, I wanted to kind of talk to you about some of the reasons why these solutions die. So even if you were on the lucky few that was able to pull through and go live with Dynamics 365 and your users were excited, your data was perfect and everything is working awesome, well, if you don't follow the discipline and avoid these 10 things that we talked about, your solution can die and your success won't be remembered fondly. It will be remembered as, yeah, no, when we went live, it was good, but man, now it's a nightmare. People will remember you by that, or remember the system by that, or you as a partner by that. I never want to go through a process of being remembered as, yeah, we work with this company and our system is awful. Well, it's awful now because you became complacent with this thing 2 years ago, and now the solution is a mess, right? So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget that you can email us with questions or suggestions or feedback. I know that some of you reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. So if you do that, thank you so much. Gus Gonzalez 2 on LinkedIn, just like my Twitter, Gus Gonzalez 2 as well, if you want to follow me there. But if you want to send us an email with any questions or concerns or suggestions, info@crmmvppodcast.com. If you're listening to this and you're brand new to it, all of our episodes are at crmmvppodcast.com. Obviously, if you subscribe to us, which I hope you do, that way the episodes are auto-downloaded every 2 weeks. We've been posting episodes every 2 weeks for almost 3 years now without missing a single episode. So we don't have seasons or anything. So if you are subscribed to our channel, our podcast channel, thank you for doing that. And obviously, you can listen to all the episodes there as well. So once again, any comments, any suggestions, I highly appreciate that. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one.